Today, folks, we tell the story of one of the most luxurious and sought after destinations in East Tennessee during its heyday, Tate Springs. This grand resort and bean station was once a playground for America's wealthiest families, offering high class accommodations, an 18-hole golf course, and mineral spring water that was shipped internationally. But like many of these grand Appalachian hotels, Tate Springs didn't last forever. Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilly, along with Rod Mullins, and this is another one of the stories of Appalachia.
Well, Steve, I've heard about Tate Springs. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that little story we've always talked about, the High Knob Hotel in Wise County. You know, it was there, but, not a lot of information. But no, we know a little bit more information about Tate Springs, though, and what it did and some of the things involved with it. But it kind of faded off after a time, didn't it?
Well, Tate Springs is very popular. Even to this day, people know about Tate Springs. Located there in eastern Granger County, Tennessee, down in Bean Station, kind of where I was at when I went and did some video for the William Bean podcast that we did a few weeks ago. But very nice place. A few of the buildings are still there, including one that is on the National Register of Historic Places. And we'll tell you about that a little bit later on. Now, as I said, it's down in Granger County along what's now U.S. Route 11W. Before the resort ever existed, though, this land had a long history. It was situated along what was called the Great Indian Warpath, and legend has it that Cherokee warriors discovered the mineral spring that would later make this place famous. The spring was considered neutral ground between warring tribes and was believed to have healing properties for stomach, kidney, and liver ailments. Now, the land eventually became part of a North Carolina land grant purchased by Colonel William Hord in 1791. But it wasn't until 1865 that the area really started to change. That year, Samuel Tate bought a large portion of the land and built the first hotel at the spring site, which could house about 500 guests. And Rod, that was just the beginning.
That's right, Steve. But one other thing before we go on. Do you know
Yes.
what else Granger County is famous for?
Enlighten me.
Tomatoes.
That's absolutely correct, yeah.
Some of the best tomatoes in this area come out of Granger County, Tennessee. I'm giving a plug for all you farmers down there, those Granger County tomatoes, because that was one of the things my dad used to swear about. He said, hey, you got to get Granger County, Tennessee tomatoes. You can't get them from anyplace else. Well, Steve, the Tate family ran the hotel for a little over a decade, but in 1876, a Union Army veteran named Thomas Tomlinson saw the potential of the place, and he bought the property. Tomlinson was no stranger to the area. He had fought in the Battle of Bean Station during the Civil War. He set out to expand and improve the resort, making it into one of the, kind of places that would attract the country's wealthiest and most influential people. He first built a stunning Victorian-style two-story spring house over the mineral spring, creating an elegant centerpiece for the property. Then in 1898, he started building a much larger and grander hotel. And over the next several years, he expanded it in phases, completing the final section in 1905. And when it was finished, the Tate Spring Hotel was a three-story luxury resort complete with wide verandas and, of course, reserved for Tomlinson's personal use. And at its peak, Tate Springs became known as the Jewel of the Appalachians, attracting not only America's elite, but also international travelers seeking the renowned mineral water.
Now, folks, let's talk about the kind of folks who visited Tate Springs during its prime. When they finished up the Peavine Railroad in 1896, which connected Morristown to Knoxville, Tate Springs became a major destination. Guests would arrive in private rail cars, and among them were some of the most famous families in America, with names like Rockefeller, Ford, and Mellon. The resort offered everything the wealthy elite could want: horseback riding, tennis courts, a billiards room, a ballroom, and a massive 100-acre park filled with lush bluegrass lawns and over 800 shade trees. But as always, the real attraction was the mineral spring. The water, known as Tate Epsom water, was bottled and shipped worldwide. It was even prescribed by doctors as a health tonic. The resort's reputation for elegance and relaxation made it a highly sought-after vacation spot for those looking to escape the summer heat and enjoy that cool mountain air.
Well, the resort kept growing. In 1924, a swimming pool and bathhouse were added near German Creek. And in 1925, the resort opened an 18-hole golf course designed by the legendary Donald Ross. Even golfing legend Bobby Jones played on those fairways. Private cottages were built the same year, and they quickly became, well, infamous for hosting those all-night drinking parties there at the establishment. So much, in fact, that the row of cottages all earned the nickname of Rowdy Row. But it wasn't just high society enjoying Tate Springs. The resort became a gathering place for local business leaders, politicians, and entertainers. Lavish banquets, political meetings, and musical performances were common occurrences. The resort's ballroom saw grand celebrations that lasted late into the night, with live orchestras playing for guests dressed in their finest attire. Well, Tate Springs even had its own powerhouse, providing electricity to the resort long before many rural areas had access to it. Yeah, before TVA, I'm sure. Well, a state-of-the-art sewage treatment plant and a water pumping station ensured that guests had access to clean water and modern plumbing, luxuries that were, well, not even yet standard in most of Appalachia at the time.
But, Rod, as we've seen before, success doesn't always last forever. By the late 1920s, things were starting to change. The rise of the automobile meant that people had more travel options, and the economic downturn of the Great Depression made it difficult for luxury resorts like Tate Springs to survive. The Peavine Railroad shut down in 1928, and fewer visitors were making their way to the resort. As revenue declined, upkeep on the massive property became more challenging. Some of the more extravagant amenities, like the live orchestras and the formal dinner services, were scaled back. In an attempt to keep the resort afloat, management offered special rates and, yes, promotional packages. Specials, as they say. But the financial strain was just a bit too great. By the 1930s, Tate Springs was struggling to stay afloat, and in 1936, the original hotel built by Samuel Tate was torn down. Then, in 1941, the Tennessee Valley Authority, good old TVA, flooded part of the property when they impounded the Holston River to create Cherokee Lake. The flooding wiped out some of the resort's grounds, sewage plant, and even parts of the golf course. U.S. Route 11 was rerouted, separating the hotel from much of the remaining land, and Rod, that just really pretty much just about brought an end to the whole thing, didn't it?
It sounded the death knell, just pretty much is what it did to the resort. But in 1943, the Tomlinson family sold what was left of the resort to Kingswood School, which converted the property into a school and an orphanage. 2 decades later, in February of 1963, the Grand Tate Springs Hotel was destroyed in a massive fire. Today, all of that remains is of this, well, once beautiful world-class resort are a few scattered buildings, the pool, bathhouse, a few cabins, and the Victorian-style spring house, which was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. It's incredible to think of how Tate Springs went from being a luxurious retreat for America's elite to almost disappearing entirely from history. If it was not for the remaining structures and some of the stories that have been passed down, even to this day, you'd never know that such a grand place existed in Bean Station, Tennessee.
Yeah, that is so true, Rod. And the grounds are still just absolutely gorgeous if you go up there. You can park there where the school is and can get out, and they have a trail that goes around through there, which goes by that spring house. And it's big and it's nice. And I don't know, it would have been a good place to go and spend a weekend, I think, way back 150 years ago.
Yeah, you mentioned this too. I thought this was interesting. Roosevelt's Studebakers, Ford, Mellons, hey, Roosevelt attended another Warm Springs in Georgia, was probably a lot like this, but maybe not to the degree of the fanciness that was involved with the Tate Springs facility.
These hotels, for whatever reason, sprang up after the Civil War. All of them, except for this one, being on tops of mountains. You had the Roan Mountain Hotel. You had several of the other ones too, and probably that High Knob Hotel as well that we can't find a whole lot out about.
Yeah.
But this one is actually farther down and not too far from where the lake is. And I mentioned German Springs. You remember what was at German Springs, don't you?
I think so, but refresh my memory. I'm old.
That's where the original Bean Station was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It was. That's
Yeah.
where the original Bean Station was.
So I guess all these folks that were going to try to be entrepreneurs and make some money decided we got to put these places up in the mountains and get people up there. And so we had this rash of just hotel after hotel after hotel up on top of the mountains in Appalachia.
Gosh, the similarities, though, are just incredible, because then I start thinking of the Greenbrier, the Homestead, places like this up in Bath County, up near Bath County in Virginia. These places were all over the place. If they found that little tiny bit of a glimmer of something that they could use to its advantage, boy, I'm telling you, they sold the heck out of it in order to get people there and to take advantage of it.
Appalachia was a hot and happening place back then, I think.
They were. It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
And folks, that's the story of Tate Springs, a lost Appalachian luxury resort. Another one of the stories of Appalachia. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the Stories Podcast if you haven't done so already. You'll find us on your favorite podcast app or on our YouTube channel. As always, till next time, y'all take care. So long, everybody.
So long.